Hey, Dad, can you call me when you have a minute? My spidey sense went off almost immediately. Intense abdominal pain that essentially doubled him over. And Patrick was a Marine, had a very high pain threshold. It's described as an apple core lesion. The GI doc called me and was very upright, very forthcoming. Your son has an apple core lesion in his colon. Cancer had spread to his lungs. So he had stage 4, which carries a dismal 5-year relative survival rate of 14%. When Patrick was diagnosed, I was really angry at God, really angry. The question that'll never get answered. I want people to be aware of this global phenomenon, this global health threat, and to not be complacent about gastrointestinal symptoms that you might think I'm young and healthy, I don't need to worry about this, nor to let a healthcare provider dismiss your symptoms.
In today's conversation, I want you to meet George Beauregard because his story carries a warning that we cannot afford to ignore. George is a physician. He spent decades caring for patients, and then cancer came for his own son. Patrick was 29 years old, healthy, newly married, and diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. I want you to meet George because he understands the complexity and fragility of life, while holding 3 conflicting truths at the same time. When medicine meets fatherhood, when faith and grief collide, and making the choice to turn loss into advocacy, all so that other families do not have to live this story. George, it is your time to be seen.
Thank you, Marisa. Thank you very much for having me on.
That'd be surreal to even hear those words strung together. Take us back, if you would, to the day, the beginning of Patrick's diagnosis. And if you would, walk us through those early days of what it was like to be both his father and also to be a physician.
So fatherhood and medicine are ingrained in my identity. Patrick was my second son, very healthy, wasn't one to call me unnecessarily or text me unnecessarily. And yet in the mid-afternoon of a weekday, I was working in Boise, Idaho at the time, I get a text from him saying, "Hey, Dad, can you call me when you have a minute?" My spidey sense went off almost immediately. And I don't know why I was thinking something must be up, but I did call him, and he had been ill for a day. Intense abdominal pain that essentially doubled him over. And Patrick was a Marine, had a very high pain threshold, and had episodic nausea and vomiting. So I asked him a bunch of questions, called alarm questions, which would indicate, is there really something serious going on here? He replied no to all of them. So I thought to myself, they had honeymooned in Tahiti and Bora Bora. So I thought to myself, maybe you've picked up something there. And, so gave him some simple instructions and then said, I'll call me back in a little bit.
Right, because this was 1 month after they got married, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I called Kathy, alerted her, because she was back home in Massachusetts, and alerted her that he had called. She, as would be expected of Kathy, she called him almost immediately. And after a couple of hours, she told him, you need to go to the emergency room. She, like me, didn't like the tone of his voice and the pace, how he was speaking. Just wasn't there. So off he goes to the emergency room. I get a phone call later on from Kathy saying they were about to discharge him from the ER, but he had a breakthrough pain. So they did a CAT scan of his abdomen, and it showed a mass, and very not specifically described, but a mass of concern. He was going to have a sigmoidoscopy the next morning.
Okay.
So I was surprised to hear that. But again, I was thinking probably got some form of infectious colitis or inflammatory colitis or something. So he has a sigmoidoscopy the next morning. And as a physician, I'm familiar with what a lumen narrowing tumor, how it's described. and it's described as an apple core lesion. The GI doc called me and was very upright, very forthcoming. Your son has an apple core lesion in his colon. I was shocked. That's not what I was prepared to hear. But even then I thought, oh my God, he's 29 years old. So, maybe this is, if it is colorectal cancer, it's stage 2 or stage 3. And, the survival rates for those stages are good.
Right.
So anyway, and then I was on a plane, within minutes, headed back home.
Sure.
The next day, however, was more shocking because a CAT scan of his chest showed that the cancer had spread to his lungs. So he had stage 4, which carries a dismal 5-year relative survival rate of 14%. Shocking to me, certainly as a father, that this would be happening to one of my children.
Yes.
And also shocking to me as a physician. During my 20 years in clinical practice, I saw but a handful of people under 50 who had cancer. During my next 20 years as a physician executive, leading big population health management platforms, really not a lot of early onset cancer. When I started researching it, though, I found out differently that, this has been a growing problem. I had to be his father first.
Yes, it's so hard.
Emotional support and love. And I had my own early onset cancer experience when I was 49 years old.
That's right.
I could also draw from that experience to try to help him in any manner that I could. I could also be a physician advisor, but that was the secondary role that I was going to play.
When you thought about it, did you think about it in those kinds of boxes? How did it intersect? Because sometimes life, most times, it doesn't just fit into wearing those hats, but it sounds like you were really deliberate about, father first, showing up as Patrick and as your family would need in that type of setting.
Yeah, no, that was definitely first and foremost in my mind, was be his father first, be a husband to Kathy, because a mom hearing this about one of her children, I mean, I'm a father, not a mother, but a mother, it's a little bit of a deeper experience, emotional experience. And thinking about my other children, his older brother, his younger sister, his younger brother, I sort of had to do the best I could to support them and help them understand. None of them are in healthcare.
Right.
My youngest was 18 years old at the time. So I had to do my best to help them make the best sense of it that we could as we learned information along the way.
Right. Well, and with this,
you have to compartmentalize things.
Yeah. I mean, and thinking about it as, you look at your children, there are instant things that need to happen for siblings of people that also have this type of diagnosis, right? And going in and being seen and getting their colonoscopies as well. Was that something that happened for them quickly as all processing what's going on with Patrick and his family?
Yeah, that part didn't happen immediately. Once we had tissue confirmation of his diagnosis, we knew immediately that his 3 siblings absolutely needed to be, to have a colonoscopy, which they all have had. And fortunately, they were all negative. So that's good.
Right.
But that's something that they'll have to do, obviously, the rest of their lives.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And him being certainly as young and healthy and fit and just on the precipice of marriage and life and the next chapter, it's a lot to think because you don't get that lead time. In our case, having 3 little boys, right? I'm like, at what age? I was 39 at diagnosis. And I'm like, as their mom, I won't feel comfortable with them just starting at 29. There's probably something more unique and specialized and tailored that we'll need to do for them, especially with the rise and how young people are being diagnosed with late stage colorectal cancers today at that early onset stage. So much to process and work through. And, as you've touched on, this impacts the entire family. This was not just Patrick. It was not just his parents and the three of you in that capsule. The extension of this is so wide for one particular case and instance. And the way in our meeting, just for our listeners, George and I got to meet in Boston earlier this year. So George and I got to meet in Boston and became connected through the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute, where Patrick was treated and where Dr. Kimmy Ang leads the Young Onset Colorectal Cancer Center. I'd actually purchased a copy of the book just like 10 days before meeting you after someone had suggested it. So I was very starstruck and amazed to get to meet you and your entire family there in that setting so quickly after learning about your book. Do you want to share a little bit about the moment when you knew writing a book was going to be an important part of your family journey, of Patrick's legacy, of carrying forward the advocacy work and all the learning that you all have, really experienced over your lifetime?
Sure. So the first thing I'll say is that Patrick and Amanda, his wife,
Yes.
they journaled publicly on Caring Bridge, a nonprofit where people can share a healthcare journey that they're experiencing with their friends and others and family in a private and secure manner. So I had Patrick's words at my disposal because I couldn't assume what he was thinking every step along the way.
Oh, sure.
Writing is how I best express myself. And the shock of this, I started writing, journaling to help myself navigate what I was feeling and what was happening and what was going to happen next and how was he feeling. And I really believed at the beginning, I knew the dismal odds. And I believed he was going to end up on the right side of the survival coin.
That's right.
I thought this is going to be a great story in Storyworth. Father and son survivors passed down for generations in the family, not publicly. And
Sure.
That's what it was going to be.
Sure.
As Patrick's condition deteriorated, and I had researched more about early onset cancer and saw that it was an emerging global threat, I said to myself, there's a bigger story to be told here. And how Patrick conducted himself, Marisa, was remarkable. How he handled his diagnosis and how he chose to spend his energy and spend his time and how he thought positively and inspired others was remarkable. So I said, there's a story there to be told that could inspire other people. And we've got to raise awareness about early onset cancer. So that's when I pivoted to writing a journal to, writing a book. I didn't know if the book would ever make it off my iPad, frankly.
Sure.
But, it ended up, fortunately, making it off the iPad, and being published.
Well, it sure did. And it's really been special to me in a personal way. And I think the honesty that you share throughout the book, and especially about your faith journey, was one that really struck me, because going through this, I can just imagine for myself the questions of why God, like why is this happening? How can you exist and this be what is the fate right now? And it shaking and really rocking faith to the core. I really appreciated how direct and honest you were about your faith journey. Do you want to share a little bit about that? Now we're adding a third hat on, right? Father, physician, and, faithful person. And they all coexist. They clash at times. Sometimes they carry us through this illness. But can you share a little bit about that faith component for you and maybe where it sits today as well?
Sure. So, I grew up in a Roman Catholic family.
Mm-hmm.
I was an altar boy in my younger years. Hopefully that gets me some brownie points at the end. But I wouldn't describe myself as a devout Catholic.
Okay.
I would say, we went to church every Sunday, but I think part of being a physician is that you see a lot of bad things happen to good people.
That's right.
It really felt to me that maybe that's an indicator that God might be indifferent
Mm.
was happening to good people. So that always sort of gnawed at the back of my mind. And in 2002, when the news broke about the Archdiocese of Boston
Yeah.
clergy sex abuse scandal and how it had been covered up, I stopped going to mass.
Hmm.
I still did my best to live my life with Christian values,
Sure.
but I really stopped going to church at that time.
Hmm.
And I was really, when Patrick was diagnosed, I was really angry at God, really
Yeah.
angry.
Yeah.
You know,
Rightfully so.
the question that'll never get answered. But fortunately for me, toward the end of Patrick's journey, a remarkable woman entered our life, a nun who almost preternaturally, showed us the way back to, faith. Patrick was a man of faith. His
Yes.
faith never wavered.
Mm.
He and Amanda faithfully went to church and again, they lived with Christian values, but this nun was just remarkable. And she really taught me how to view this tragedy through a different lens.
Mm.
And
What was that?
well, it was, it's about not being so angry about,
Ah.
and that God didn't do this to your son. God brought your son in the earth and had him had him fulfill his 32-year mission, which he fulfilled.
Sure.
And Patrick did have the experience of seeing his infant son Noah born 2 months before he passed away.
Just
And
amazing.
the nun arranged Noah's baptism and Patrick's final rites in our home. She brought the church to him. A very powerful moment for me.
Yep.
And it really has helped me. It helped to restore my faith,
Mm.
frankly.
How does it show up for you today?
Well, I'd have to say, Marissa, it's chiefly about, not harboring the anger.
Okay.
Because the anger you can destroy yourself,
That's right.
relationships with other people if you're angry all the time.
Yes.
So I think I focus more on the blessings in life that, not that I didn't before, but I
Sure.
appreciate those blessings and, where they came from.
Mm-hmm.
So I just try to carry that forward, every day.
There's sometimes, I think there's nothing like inflection point is to put it mildly, right? But there are these moments in life, in particular with extreme adversity and hardship, when our perspective, for me, those are moments where I actually feel like closest to my faith. So I feel like I'm living my faith out in a way through the action, the daily work of trying to give back in whatever ways I can. Is there a part with the book and the advocacy and your knowledge of certainly as an internist, but also as a healthcare executive, and now someone who's so deeply steeped in the late breaking colorectal cancer, early intervention, detection, blood-based tests, stool-based tests, treatment, clinical trials, all of these things, like you know so much than so many of us do when we're meeting our cancer for the first time and through, like, how does that show up in life for you? How, if at all, does it relate back to faith for you?
These tests are emerging. More of them are coming. The Shield test has been FDA approved. The Guardant's multi-cancer detection test was granted breakthrough device designation. Another RNA stool-based test was FDA approved a year ago. And both the Shield and the stool-based test have been incorporated in the NCCN guidelines for colorectal cancer screening. And there are more on the way. Now, how these things will work their way into clinical practice, I think, is an open question. There are a lot of skeptics out there, understandably so. There are people, one side of the aisle feels like none of these can be approved until there's a large randomized control trial that is rigorous and shows without a doubt that the benefit-harm balance is where it should be. So that would take 3 to 5 years at least. And what are we supposed to do in the meantime? Do nothing?
No. We just lose time.
Younger people, those are avoidable deaths.
That's exactly right.
So that's where I don't mind being a controversial figure. And frankly, I think I've seen early onset cancer move from the cusp of national news a few years ago, an article in the Wall Street Journal, one in the Washington Post, one in the New York Times. Now you're seeing it a lot more in the media, in the print media, the television media, and then Time Magazine back in April, the cover, early onset cancer.
That's right.
Since then, Kat, I was on the Today Show, a bittersweet moment, back
course.
where, my son had been.
Yeah.
And Maria Shriver's Sunday paper. And
Yeah.
This month, The Lancet, an international world-leading medical journal, publishes a review about the book. Star Magazine, whatever you think of Star Magazine, it's getting the word out to the generations. It's millennials and Gen Xers that really
That's right.
need to know this. So I've been very surprised, very honored that it's received the amount of attention that it has today.
And that's what a platform can do, right? You started writing it for your family, for future generations. And I think when you have that true intention and true heart, it shines through in it. And then there are other use cases far beyond, like we talk about the diagnosis and the loss of a child being unimaginable. Similarly, for a book, I'm so honored within the month of the release to have gotten to meet you and your family and for us to share the same space in the way that we did, because I'm so excited to see where this is going to go. And I read the entire book on my flight back to LA from Boston, made my notes, and here's what, here's call outs and different things. I read with a highlighter and a pencil and all kinds of ways to try and really consume content and keep my focus. And it took me back to parts of my treatment, to medications, to side effects, to certain parts that I never thought I would forget, but certainly were not rolling off of my tongue in the same way that they were even the year after treatment ended for me. And it's just a really special balance and tone that you strike in this book between your personal experiences, hearing Patrick's voice come through in it in the way that you helped share those journal, both on Caring Bridge and privately, and just how it's intertwined is so thoughtfully done. And frankly, in a really unique way that I haven't read or seen in other books, at least that have not hit me in that sort of way. I want to take a pivot briefly down a different path, simply because music is something that matters so much and is a big part of this show. It matters so much to me personally. And I think it's something that allows us just to get to know each other and have a connection in a different way. So I'm curious if there's a particular song that encapsulates your writing of this book. I'm curious. I have a couple other music-based questions that we'll follow up on for this that kind of mark some moments in your life. But maybe we start if there's a piece that kind of encapsulates the book or your experience launching the book as well.
So it's an interesting question, because I can say while writing the book, there were a couple of songs that particularly resonated with me. Actually, there were three.
Oh, let's hear it.
Fight Song by Rachel.
Yes. So good. That was on my playlist too.
That's exactly what Patrick did.
Yes.
No.
Yep.
Causing explosions and, really becoming a strong advocate and not succumbing to the effects of chemotherapy or whatever he was thinking. So that was one song that, God, I could barely get through it when it came on. Brave by Sarah Bareilles was another.
Stop it. That's on my playlist too. Okay, keep going.
It just, I hear those songs, and even today, I have a hard time not welling up when I hear those songs.
Yeah, I wonder for these artists, and Rachel in particular has come out more recently about her own struggles with postpartum after becoming a mom to two girls, and has another song that's about really an anthem for mental health that is, I think, equally as strong as Fight Song. But it's been really cool these last few months to see her using music to process, using music to connect to audiences and really elevate causes that are deeply personal, not just to her life experience, but also to changing the behavior patterns where these societal norms really silence. And look, you and I are aligned in that mission on this colorectal cancer journey and the conversation, just all of the stigma around it that silences people, that then we lose time from being able to have earlier intervention for them. And that's if they're having symptoms. You know, you mentioned Patrick didn't at all. And so in those cases, what do we do and how can we help others avoid this? So, okay, one romantic question for you about music. First dance song from your wedding with Kathy.
Just the Way You Are by Billy Joel.
Oh, so good. And when we were talking earlier about, seeing a lot of really good people lose life or go through hardship, I was about to say, Billy Joel said it, only the good die young. It's like.
Kathy and I are both very independent people. And that song is about each person, even though, yes, you want to be together, but you're going to honor each other's ideologies and ways of approaching things. And the song fit us very, very nicely.
So good. It's so good. Do you get to go to his concert and ever see him live?
We've seen him live several times, back in the day, and he was just terrific.
That's amazing. My first birthday post-treatment, he was playing LA on March 10th. And it was the first concert we took all the boys to. And I have to say, even at that stage of life, just equally as riveting as getting to see it. So I love knowing that. Oh, so good. So good. All right. So we're wrapping up our time here. And I want to bring us back to kind of legacy and the advocacy work. What do you want people to know? What do you want people to know about the disease, about early onset colorectal cancer, and maybe in particular about how to truly support someone that is going through this experience, almost regardless of the stage of diagnosis, in order to get through it? What do you want them to know?
Well, I think first and foremost, I want people, to be aware of this global phenomenon, this global health threat, and to not be complacent about gastrointestinal symptoms that you might think, I'm young and healthy, I don't need to worry about this, nor to let a healthcare provider dismiss your symptoms because you're young and healthy. This is nothing to worry about. You've got to press. If you know your body better than anybody else does. So if you're not getting the answers you want, you need to press for testing or change doctor if you have to, if you're not.
That's right.
So, and I think, how to support people who are going through this. I think you really have to first listen as much as possible. Let them say, what's on their mind. And I think instead of asking them open-ended questions like, what can I do for you? A specific question. Can I help bring meals for next week? Can I do your groceries? I know you're overwhelmed. I mean, these people are so overwhelmed.
Yes.
They're in the prime of their life. They're in their most productive years. They've got children, and now their whole world has been turned completely upside down. So, someone else described that caregivers deserve as much attention.
Yes.
Because they often, they've been described as people who, they take themselves like a coat out in the hallway and put it on a hook and then close the door, and they don't take care of themselves. And that hampers their ability to take care of the person they're trying to care for. So they also need attention as well. So I think those are two of the ways. And there are going to be, be okay with awkward moments.
That's right.
Times when they're not going to want to talk, or they're going to say something that maybe it seems odd to you. And be mindful, obviously, of what you say to them, but again, recognize that there are going to be some awkward moments, but don't let it allow you to build a wall of silence or, I'm just not going to ask any questions.
That's right.
These people really need as much emotional support as they can get.
And sometimes that's just sitting in the silence as awkward as that might feel,
Yes.
just being by their sides. And that silence is so hard. That silence is really hard after treatment ends or life ends. People think it's quote unquote over.
Mhm.
It's not.
It's not over. Yeah.
It's not over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I said, sometimes I think most people have an urge, I have to do something.
Yeah.
And sometimes all you have to do, to your point, is listen.
Yes.
Because that helps.
Just be.
Yeah.
Just be.
Mhm.
Just be there. And it may feel funny because it's so infrequent that we slow down. They just need to know that they're not alone. The caregivers, the extended family, the patient, their children, the community, just showing up is the biggest.
Yes.
Yeah. Ugh. Such good advice. So every guest we close with the same question, which is, what does it mean to you, George? What does it mean to be seen?
Well, I mean, for me, again, I'm trying to raise awareness. I'm trying to yell as loud as I can to as many people as I can that this is something we need to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And to pay attention to these emerging tests, and especially the medical community. You cannot sit by and simply rely on orthodox, research methods and care delivery models. That paradigm has to change.
That's right.
And again, I think I'm cautiously optimistic given some of the recent developments that we seem to be heading in that direction. So I think for me, that's, and again, my son's reaction was so inspirational that the other thing I want to be seen about is that I can tell them about my son.
That's right. Well, he lives on.
He lives on. This fall will be 5 years. It's really hard to believe that I have not heard my son speak, aside from a clip on the Today Show. That's, haven't heard my son speak in 5 years. As a parent, it's unfathomable.
Yeah.
But he lives on, and I have to honor him by being.
Yeah, and you are.
So I can promote him.
And you are. I mean, I wouldn't have seen or known, Patrick, had your book not come to light. So from one person's point of view, I see you doing that.
Thank you for this opportunity. I'm very grateful.
Oh, it's mutual. No, I'm so happy. I'm so happy to do it.
So in the truest sense of From Carpools to Chemo, I'm sitting outside of a drop-off as we speak. And I'm reflecting because some conversations stick with us long after the interview, and George Beauregard's conversation is one of those. Josh and I have been talking about what we're taking from this conversation into our own home and our own family. Because remember, these stories are not meant to stay in our headphones. They're meant to land with us at the dinner table. So for us, it's this. We're not assuming that youth equals safety, right? We know that firsthand. We're paying attention to our bodies sooner. We're having real conversations with our boys about health, about family history, instead of waiting for some sort of arbitrary age or sense of security that they're, able to handle it. We're also saying things out loud that sometimes feel uncomfortable. Sometimes, for me, feel overly sentimental. If something feels off in our bodies, if we're scared, if we need help, if we're angry, we're inviting each other onto our team as a family. If we're grateful, we're not keeping it silently inside. We're really trying to encourage, even for Beau, who's 6 years old, communicating about those feelings, those emotions, those thoughts that we have. And George reminds us that a legacy is not built after someone's gone. It's built in the daily choices that we make while we're here, while we're together. So as a family, we are choosing faith, a regular faith practice over fear, conversation over silence, and real presence. So please, maybe this is a real invitation from Patrick's story and from our family to yours. Do not leave important words unsaid. Do not ignore what your body is whispering, and do not wait to have the conversations that matter. Say them out loud, at your table, in your home, with the people that you love, because that's where being seen starts. So for today, thank you to Billy and the entire editorial team that has made this show possible. Thanks to all of you, our audience, our listeners, who we do this for every single day. And if this is that little nudge that one of you needed to hear today, that's enough for us. So until next time, thanks for listening, and put that seatbelt on, drive safely, and we'll see you soon.